So last night I'm waiting for the Avengers to start when two rather tall gentlemen are about to sit in the row in front of me when suddenly one of them looks up at me and says, "You know what? I don't want to block your view." Has anyone ever been so shocked by a simple, kind gesture before? All week I've been taking donations for the Starlight Children's Foundation. We had a 19-year-old guy who I went to school with walk into the store and buy our game. I asked if he wanted to donate to Starlight and he asked what they were about. I told him all the great things they do, and he said sure, I'll donate. When I asked how much he said, well, it's payday tomorrow, so let's see what I have left over after I buy this. He then donated $570 to them. Knowing that a 19-year-old guy is willing to donate that much money and receive nothing in return is amazing. I mean, he could have thought of that money as a new bike, iPod, etc. He just donated it to help sick children. When my mother and I immigrated to the UK in 1998, I was 8. I remember traveling back home on the tube sometime near Christmas. There was a lively young group of guys sitting across us who struck up a conversation. I don't remember exactly what we talked about, but when it was time for them to get off, one of the lads pulled out his wallet and handed me a £10 note and said, "Welcome to the country." I remember saving that £10 for a while, though later I probably spent it on something silly like ice cream. Wherever you are, happy drunk tube man, you will never be forgotten. That is class. What a fella. I once got to Wendy's, noticed they were closing up and walked out. The guy behind the register chased me outside to tell me he would serve me. It was really nice. He knew it would be more work for him and there was literally no benefits for him, but he did it anyways. A couple of years ago I went to a concert by myself at the Wiltern in LA, standing room only. I arrived super late because catching the metro down Wilshire at 6:30 in the evening can be a bee, so I got there just as the doors were opening. Being too young for alcohol and too broke for a t-shirt, I parked myself as close to the stage as I could get without a wristband and decided to pass the time by talking with the lady guarding the pit. Nothing major, just idle chit-chat and little jokes about the increasingly creative excuses people were coming up with to get into the pit without a wristband. The show started and all of a sudden I feel a hand on my arm. The security lady. She asked me if I was by myself, and I nodded and told her I was fine, assuming that she was just worried about an 18-year-old girl alone and surrounded by a bunch of drunk people. Then she asked me if I wanted a wristband to get into the pit. After asking her if she was serious, I told her I would love to, and she slipped me a wristband and ushered me in with instructions to have fun. Then to top it all off, I ended up trapped behind a giant dude with nowhere else to go. He must have been about 6 feet 4 inches to my 5 feet 3 inches. And not a minute went by before he turned around and noticed me standing at his elbow and asked very politely if I was able to see. Before I could even say anything, he stepped out of the way and ushered me in front of him, telling me that I needed the spot more than he did, and his two friends did the same. Ended up getting to give Matt Berninger of The National a high five. I was so close to the stage. One of the best nights of my life. TLDR. A night that 2 hours before I had been convinced would end in disaster ended up with me standing 3 feet away from my favorite band, all due to the kindness of 4 strangers. When I was in the military, we had an overseas exercise in Taiwan. There was a 4-day field exercise, and by the 3rd day, we were physically exhausted and mentally drained from the lack of sleep. We passed a Chinese temple on the middle of the forest and decided to take a break there. The old man from the temple came out to us and made us tea. No jasmine tea I had since then tasted sweeter. You're not putting enough sugar in. I regularly walk into things. Doors, signs, lampposts, you name it. One time though I walked into a set of double doors and a girl actually went to see if I was okay, which was the first time anyone bothered when I did this in public. That's unfortunate and hilarious at the same time. When I was about 13-14 I was on a long plane flight. About halfway through I pulled out a bottle of lotion because my hands were dry. Because of the pressure built up in the bottle, the lotion skyrocketed out like repressed semen onto another passenger. Shocked and embarrassed, I immediately began to attempt to wipe the lotion off the passenger. He laughed and asked, "So, how much do I owe you?" What a nice guy. Skyrocketed out like repressed semen. You, sir, are quite poetic. I'll try to make this not gross. When I was in the 6th grade I crapped my pants on a class field trip. I had diarrhea, couldn't help it, twice. Needless to say, I smelled like crap all day long. My shorts were stained. My socks shoes were stained. It was awful. 6th graders don't need a reason to tease people. And I wasn't super popular to begin with. I was the introverted bookish type. So when you give them a reason like I crap in my pants twice and smell like crap, you can bet they'll unleash heck. And they did. All except one girl. She stayed with me and was my friend the whole day. She sat next to me on the 3-hour bus ride home. Despite the fact that I smelled like crap. I don't know where she's at or what she's doing now, but I hope she's a billionaire or something, because she freaking deserves it. Kindest person I've ever met, and I'll be eternally grateful for that act of friendship. I had a fairly bad motorcycle accident in India where I was studying Tibetan when I was 19. Mangled my leg stitches and some bone bruising, and after a few days I decided to try walking to the dorm bathrooms. I was barely able to walk the 40 feet to them from my room. As I hobbled along in noticeable pain, the elderly Tibetan caretaker, maybe 85 years old, does a double take, stops me and hands me his cane and says in Tibetan, "You need it more than me, young man." I promised to give it back to him when I no longer needed it. 2 weeks later I was healed up enough to walk without the cane and went looking for him. I find his daughter at his residence packing his things as he had died a few days before. Yes, I felt guilty. Thanks, old man. This bud's for you. When I was about 10 in school I had the most amazing teacher ever. One day in class we were going to taste different kind of biscuits, but needed to get forms signed to say we had no allergies. Get my form signed, hand it in. The next day comes and my teacher informs me they don't have my form, so couldn't join in. Being a kid, I was crushed. I wanted delicious biscuits, so I have to sit there whilst everyone's enjoying themselves. My friends try handing me some under the table. Pretty sure the teacher saw, but he didn't care. Anyway, class ends and he calls me back, then hands me a bag full of biscuits to take home and gives me a kind wink. Was so happy I could have cried. Not only this, at Christmas he got us all presents and put them in our class drawers. Each table goes up one at a time and I notice the girls are getting pink flowery stickers and the guys Hot Wheels cars. Being a girl, but a tomboy, I was quite gutted. I grew up with 3 guys, so grew up preferring toy cars to pink stickers. Anyway, I finally go to get mine and inside he's given me a Hot Wheels car. He knew I'd appreciate it more. Mr. Thomas, if you'd read this, your small gestures stuck with me for the past 10 years. TL. DR. Had the most amazing teacher ever. That's adorable. I had an awesome teacher in a CP, like year 3, and I'll never forget her. I don't know her name, but if you taught Edo at Eli Laux on Fon in CP, you're awesome. When my mother died, I was in pieces. I remember being at the funeral and standing in front as the people passed by to share their condolences. I don't even remember the faces as they are passing me by. Just as things are about to start for the service, I was just blubbering. Only child of a single mom, so my world was a bit broken now. After the service, one of my mom's co-workers pulled me aside. She said that my mom had asked her to give me something that she knew I would need just around this time. It was the biggest hug I had ever had and I cried on her shoulder for what felt like a million years. Diane, if you are out there, thanks. I am as hard as a boulder emotion wise, but that brought a tear to my eyes. I thank you for that, sir, or ma'am. When I was growing up, my family really struggled. Single mom, 3 sisters, and although my dad paid child support, money disappeared in my mom's hands, and we never had food in the house, and we were left to fend for ourselves a lot since she was always out working. There was a small, family-owned grocery store down the street, and when there was nothing to eat, I would go down there to steal things for me and my 2 sisters. I was about 7 or 8 at the time, and although I knew it was bad, I didn't really see any other options. One day, whilst hiding food in my pockets and in my jacket, I got stopped by Mr. O'Neill, the grocery store owner. He had seen my not so sneaky 7-year-old self stealing food. When I handed everything to him, he asked why I was stealing bread and cheese and lunch meat, because most kids would steal candy bars and sodas and stuff. And I told him cause we didn't have any food at the house and my sisters and I were hungry. Mr. O'Neill went to church with and knew my grandparents quite well, and kind of had an idea of what was going on. So he told me whenever I needed food to just come in and ask. I was raised to never ask for help, and I would only go there if we had absolutely no food, and I wouldn't abuse the privilege. He was an extremely kind man, took a situation that was given to him, and realizing what would push a youngster to do what I was doing, he decided to help. He died a few years ago, and I still appreciate that he spared me and my sisters from going hungry many times. I've seen friends shoplift petty things from the mall or stores when I was in my teenage years, and I would get furious at them. They would laugh at me, but they had no idea why it infuriated me. It was always stuck in the back of my mind that the person they're stealing from may be a kind-hearted, hard-working soul like Mr. O'Neill that would help you if they could. My freshman year of college, I lost a good friend to a car accident. At the dining hall the day after it happened, I ran into someone that I had met just once or twice. She asked if I was okay since my eyes were a bit puffy and I was generally acting sullen. I told her what had happened and she sat with me for an hour or two. Just being there, that little act from someone I barely knew helped me get through the day. As a tall person myself, I am always at pains to avoid blocking people's view, and other tall people I know are as well. I have never actually pointed it out like these guys did. I just don't like feeling like I'm wrecking it for someone. So short people avoid it. If you are seated near a tall person and they are not blocking your view when they could have, they have probably avoided blocking your view on purpose. I'm pretty tall, so at the movies I tend to slouch down in my seat to avoid blocking someone's view. Hurts my back, but as someone who was really short as a kid, I know how much it sucks when a tall person sits in front of you. Going on a trip overseas and was horribly broke, so I called a friend who owed me some money. He was flush, so he agreed to pay me that day. I went to pick it up and he paid me in cash, $300, in a white envelope with my name on it, which I put in my back pocket. Stupid, his house is close to a place that takes passport photos. 10 minutes, which I needed for a visa, so I decided to walk. On the way it starts pouring rain, so I run all the way to get my picture taken. After I get the picture taken, I realize the envelope is not in my pocket. I tell the photographer I'll be back and run to my friend's house in a panic. Maybe I left it there? About half a block from my friend's house I see a planter box outside a house with the envelope sitting on it, obviously placed there by some kind soul hoping its owner returns for it. It was soaking wet, so the money was plainly visible. I nervously stuffed it in my front pocket and walked all the way home in disbelief. Not only did someone find it and place it there, numerous people walked by and didn't take it. Shocking. Thanks whoever you were. You saved my butt and restored my faith in the human race. When my grandfather passed away, my brother was in sleepaway camp about 4 hours away and my parents had to figure out how to get him home. With news not out yet, my parents' friends call and ask them to go on a day trip, which they obviously decline and share the news. The friends then literally drop everything and offer to go pick up my brother, taking my father with them, but they were ready to drive 8 hours on their own just to do us a favor and cancelling all their other plans, which had been long planned. I can only hope I have friends like that when I am in my 40s. I work in a group therapy setting for teens, and there are a lot of days I go home feeling overwhelmed or burnt out, from hearing sad, shocking stories of their lives and or from the constant attitude disrespect some of them give. On one of the tough nights, I was driving home from work and decided that I wanted frozen yogurt. It was a bit chilly that night and the store was closing in a half hour, so I was the only customer in there. The store was a self-serve yogurt bar with a huge selection of toppings. I get my yogurt with 1 or 2 things on top. Caramel and crushed waffle cone, I believe. After paying the man working the register, the manager, I start to walk towards the door while struggling a bit to hold my frozen yogurt and put my change back in my wallet at the same time. Can you guess what happened? I dropped the yogurt all over the floor. It gets better. I started crying. I kneeled to clean the floor as best as I could before the manager rushed over with a rag and told me not to worry about it. I apologized a few times before making my way towards the door in embarrassment. The manager stopped me and said, "Wait a second. You need to go make another one. I was feeling pretty miserable and ready to collapse in bed after the day I was having, so I said I don't think this was meant to be today. The manager insisted that I make myself another frozen yogurt, and when he saw that I only put yogurt in the cup, insisted a second time that I go back and add the toppings that I had on it originally. The story might not be as amazing as some of the others in the thread, but I always thought he was very kind. My little boy is sick and my family is basically living at the hospital right now. The other day I parked in the parking garage and I noticed that the guy picking up litter doubled back from the stairs. As I walked towards the elevator carrying my newborn daughter, a clothes hamper, a diaper bag, and a giant Elmo balloon, he returned to the stairs. Once I got to the elevator I realized he had come back to push the button for me so I didn't have to wait. It was so simple, but I will never forget it. Sometimes it's just the little things that help, especially at hospitals. When my grandpa was in hospital, he was in ICU and we were practically living there. I'll always remember the barista at the hospital cafe always gave us bigger coffees than we ordered. We must have looked that tired. I hope your little boy gets better. Have some Reddit love. A few mates and I were riding in a cab all the way across London. The cabbie overheard our banter and correctly surmised that we were all military, us UKers. When we arrived at our destination, he waived the significant fare and wouldn't take any money, despite our protests. I know this sort of thing is reasonably common in the US, but I haven't really seen it anywhere else. To close the karma loop, I noted his cab number and wrote a letter of thanks to the cab company. So you basically told the cab company that one of their employees let you and your friends ride for free. Nice. A few weeks after my brother died, I was at the mall. I was at that stage where I was still seeing him everywhere, out of the corner of my eye and such. I remember clearly being in Sam Goody and browsing through their CDs, looking for some Metallica because it was my brother's favorite and I was kinda desperate for ways to feel connected to him at the time. A guy walks up next to me and I glanced at him and got all teary because I thought I saw my brother for a second. He then politely asked me to scoot over and started rummaging through the Metallica CDs I'd been looking at. I got a good look at his face and he was the spitting image of my brother. This wasn't even my mind playing tricks on me. I swear they looked exactly the same. I couldn't even help it. I just started crying. He asked me what was wrong, and I told him he looked just like my brother who'd just passed away and he was even browsing his favorite music. The guy looked kinda awkward for a second and then gave me a huge bear hug and let me cry on his shoulder for a minute. I took a few seconds to calm down and picked out a CD. He walked up with me and when I went to pay he pulled out his wallet and paid for my purchase. I thanked him and started to leave the store, still all sniffly. He gave me another hug and said that my brother had awesome taste in music, and that it was too bad he never got to meet him. If it was me, I'd have been seriously tempted to have stared at you and said something like, "Avenge me, he's obviously a much better man than I am." I caught my daughter being good, and I'm gonna brag. She works part-time, while she's going to college, at a grocery store as a checkout clerk. It's her store's policy that if a worker does something above and beyond the call of duty, that worker is rewarded with a gift card, usually $5, but sometimes a little more. It's not much, but it's still nice. My daughter had won a few of them, and she kept them in her work smock pockets, just in case she forgot her lunch money. I was there to pick her up after her shift ended, but she was taking care of a very sweet little old lady, so I waited. As it turned out, the poor woman was a couple of dollars short, and without hesitation, my daughter whipped out one of her gift cards and swiped it, paying the balance of the lady's order. When I mentioned it to her, she said, "No biggie, I do it all the time. God hates people who are mean to little old ladies. That's my girl." Me and my adopted group of friends were riding our motorcycles through the countryside near Pushkar in Rajasthan and decided to stop in a field to eat some fruit and smoke. The field was owned by some farmer who was curious about 7 European strangers having a picnic and came over to see what was going on. We felt bad about trespassing and offered him an apple. This simple gesture led to him inviting all 7 of us back to his wood mud shack to make us all tea. He took a few of us on a tour to see the neighbors and the rice paddies, and prepared a sweet Indian chai on an open fire in the courtyard, with milk from the goat nearby. This poor Indian farmer and his family were so kind and generous to complete trespassing strangers who couldn't even speak the same language, and refused anything in return, besides the apple. The thing is, stories like that happened a lot to me in India. Comrade sup, I'm going to say that my friends and I are very close. There are 6 of us. A few years ago, one of my friends was awarded 2 tickets to an exclusive party that we were all excited to go to. Being the great friends that we are, we let her decide who she wanted to take with her. She returned the tickets. She wanted to go more than any of us, and she straight up sent them back with a letter saying that if we all couldn't go, that she wasn't interested. Best part is, they sent a letter back with 6 tickets. Crap was so cash. I once got talking to a girl in a clothes store at my local shopping center and she was working there. It was late-ish so there wasn't really anyone there. We really hit it off and by the time I had to leave, she thanked me for the company and gave me the jumper that I had in my hand the whole time. I had been planning to buy it for $30. For only $5. Happy ending. She is now my girlfriend. DIY. I beat you to it, Talfree. I recently started dieting and going to the gym regularly, but I'm still at the phase where I can't wear whatever I want, and sometimes clothes are too small or don't look good. One day I was shopping with a girlfriend and saw those awesome short shorts and I told her I wish I could wear something like that this summer at the beach. She replied that even if I lost weight it wouldn't be enough for me to wear shorts like that. Full stop. I have about 50 pounds to lose. I don't know why she made such a crappy comment. I was a bit hurt and I put the shorts back. I noticed this gorgeous girl was looking at me and when my friend left the other girl came up to me and said, I overheard your conversation and your friend is wrong. I've been where you are now. If you keep working hard you will be able to do what you want, wear what you want, etc. I used to weigh over 235 pounds and I swear to you, if you keep going to the gym and eating right, you will achieve your goal. Never give up. And then she winked and said clothes shopping was so much more fun now and gave me a genuine smile. I was really touched. I guess she saw how bummed I looked and since she'd been in my shoes before she felt bad for me. Thank you, kind stranger at the mall. On my second combat tour, I actually got a mid-tour leave. We landed at the Dallas airport. After the customs BS we walked out to a huge crowd of people clapping and cheering for us. One little girl, about 7-8 years old, handed me a box of Girl Scout cookies. So I said sure, how much? She said nothing, so thank you for your service. Even now as I type this I am tearing up. This little girl I will never forget. Regardless of whether one believes the US should be there or not, you men and women who are doing the fighting deserve all the thanks one can give you. A few years ago, my friend and I sat at one of the cafe tables outside and a lady next to us let us know that she was about to smoke, in case we wanted to move or something. A moment later, the direction of the wind and smoke headed our way, so the lady offered to trade seats. I thought that was a really considerate gesture. I really hate the smell of smoke and most smokers I've encountered don't think about the non-smokers around them. I had my daughter within a month after turning 17. Her father and I both decided that because we had put ourselves into that situation, we were going to do everything we possibly could to give her the life she deserves. So I went to work at a local CVS. I had come across many rude glares and comments, or awkward avoidances. One night, shortly before closing, this man came in. I don't remember everything that happened, but I do remember him looking at my belly. I expected him to say something along the lines of "You're pretty young to be having a baby." Believe it or not, people felt it was okay to say that all the time. Instead, he smiled and said, "When are you due?" I was a little surprised and told him, and what happened next was so sweet. He said, "You're young, right? Don't let anyone get to you. Keep your head up and remember it doesn't matter what other people think." That meant so much to me. My own father wouldn't speak to me really until my daughter was almost a year old, so for a stranger to treat me that way was amazing. I wish I could run into him again just to let him know we made it. I'm married to my daughter's father now. He's an IT in the Navy, and I'm in college studying to be a teacher. That little bit of encouragement meant the world to me. Thank you for sharing this. When I was 6, my family went to Italy. It was quite an expensive trip for us. We were 4 children and 2 grown-ups, and my parents never had a lot of money, but off we went. One day we're standing on a square in Florence, and the heat is just killing us. We're looking for somewhere to get something to drink, and my mum goes over to a small, overpriced cafe to see if there's room for us to sit. The waitress looks at my parents, at us children, and then back at my parents, and asks, "Are they all yours?" When my mom affirmed this, the waitress cleared a table for us, and we sit down. My mum looks at the menu, and for a moment she looks a little worried because it was expensive, but the waitress just fetched her manager and scolded him for having such high prices. I remember her standing there, yelling in Italian, and gesturing at us, and he ended up giving us a huge discount. It was really nice of her. I was getting settled into my seat on an almost full flight. There were a few empty seats scattered around, but not 2 together. A father and adolescent daughter were boarding, but didn't have adjacent seats. The girl was sad, and the flight attendants asked if someone would change seats so they could sit together. Surprisingly, not a single person volunteered to help accommodate them. I don't understand why, because when traveling alone one seat is the same as any other. I raised my hand to volunteer. It seemed like common courtesy, but the flight attendants praised me and offered me free refreshments during the flight. I moved 3 rows back and got to feel like GGG. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.